Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to a very special edition of Stateside Footy. I am your host, Steve Silver, and joining me this morning is Scott Michaels. Scott is an entrepreneur, a footballing agent, and the investor of the new National Soccer League. Good morning, Scott, and thank you for taking the time out.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for coming on early. I'm in the UK at the moment, so it's 1 p.m. I think it's what time did you say? 8 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah, it's eight. Yes, sir. It's 8 o'clock here in the great state of Michigan, and before we get into it, because you are doing something special out here in the United States, and it's absolutely a beautiful thing. But before we get into it, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe buttons, and also hit the notification bells for all those folks watching on YouTube. All right, let's get into it. And now the interesting thing about it, Scott, is you're bringing something special to the United States in the form of the NSL, and you and I have engaged a few times on X, and I find it absolutely fascinating. Considering the soccer pyramid here in the United States, I found it quite intriguing. So I guess the first question I have for you is, why are you investing in U.S. soccer?
Yeah, well, long story short, my background's retail. I built up brands over the last 25 years. I got into the football industry or soccer industry in 2017 when I relaunched Stylo Matchmakers, which was an old retro brand. The idea was to get into clubs, commercial opportunities, and basically build up investment into clubs. I then moved into a football agency where I brokered nearly $500 million of talent had represented in the UK. Most of the talent was South American talent wanting to move into the UK, Premier League or the Championship, and throughout Europe. So I became a broker probably by default, really. That's being a local guy in Manchester, England. There was a lot of clubs in the northwest, and that was really
Sure.
my job. And then we had a thing called Brexit that hit,
Yep.
which meant that none of the it was very hard to get work permits for a lot of these
Yep.
international talents. So I sort of moved
Sure.
into the mergers and acquisitions side of football and began pushing takeovers, working with fan groups, and basically trying to connect more investment, but also giving the fans an opportunity to get involved as well. And then I looked, a friend of mine gave me a call, and because I had worked in the States over the last 20 years on and off, I've lived in America, so I understand, the culture and especially soccer. And I didn't really, I went to a few MLS games, but I didn't really know much about it. And then I connected in, and I started contacting some of my clubs about the opportunity of investing in the US franchise model. And I looked at it. I put some groups together for a couple of leagues, and ultimately, I didn't like a lot of the restrictions were in place, and a lot of things were backward, which I didn't understand because I've come from the footballing perspective. The English, the meritocracy, the promotion, the relegation, and seeing this
Absolutely.
closed out American sports franchise model, I just saw it doesn't work. It was too small. It restricts. And then we had the issues with the pay to play model, which
Yep.
basically isolates all the kids who can't afford to play soccer. So I left that by choice with a bad taste in my mouth, and I thought, look, could there be an opportunity where we could create something that puts the fans, the players, and how can we put them first rather than just looking at the commercial aspects and how much money and control we could have over markets. So I then began looking at alternative models through licensing and tour-based models, which had worked for F1 and UFC, and could we actually integrate that into community owned teams on a tour-based model? and how would we do it? Then I looked into the history of American soccer, and I saw this era from the NASL, which got me excited because I brought the style of matchmakers back, who Pele and George Best wore, and
Absolutely.
we've got a lot of traction over the last 7 or 8 years with that brand. And I thought, look, maybe America's missing those original teams, the Cosmos, the Aztecs, the Chicago Sting, the Atlanta Chiefs, some of those great history that's that
Seattle
were
Sounders.
there. The Seattle Sounders, yeah,
Yeah.
they were part of the era. So could we bring it back? So I noticed, I got my lawyer to have a look at all the trademarks. All of them were dead. So I took the 10 best teams, or the 10 most relevant teams who the legends played for. From the Boston Minutemen to the Philadelphia Atoms to the all of the original teams that were stood out during that era, either being successful on the pitch or had the legends play, or brought in a lot of fans. So I made the federal trademark applications 3 years ago to bring the teams back. We're still waiting, but that's another thing that I'm working with the USPTO on why I'm still waiting after 3 years. But I have set up a petition to make sure that we can push those marks through and get them registered again, because I think it's going to be key to bring back those teams, especially if we're going to bring this new model. So going back to the model is we bring back eight original teams. We go into basically borderline states, so California, warmer weather, Dallas, Arizona, Florida, in the winter and spring where there's no mainstream soccer. I have spoke to a lot of the NCAA stadiums, college stadiums, who basically are empty on that time of year.
Sure.
So the idea would be we go into them, we just before or after the World Cup, and we host soccer festivals where we bring back these iconic teams. And the idea is, it's not about the MLS model is bringing the old granddads over playing, the dad's army, as we call it.
That's funny. Yeah, you're
Where
right. You're right, Bill.
where I think the opportunity is especially outside the play and the high schools, and all these kids who found themselves surplus to requirements, or not not strong enough economically to put themselves through in the shop window. We grab those talent and we create new American soccer superstars. And just like other sports, we use our platform to promote these soccer stars, and we go into communities. We don't just turn up and play soccer. We actually spread the word, and we go into high schools and junior schools, and we engage. And I think that's something that lacks in American soccer or US soccer, is that level of inclusivity, and that's what I plan to bring.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. I got to ask you though. I'm sure you're aware of the construction of our current pyramid here in the United States, and obviously it's a top-down model. Major League Soccer is essentially modeled after the NFL, where it is a franchise-based closed system that is heavily dependent on television revenue. They seem to have gotten away from the match day revenue, of which it was originally built upon. And now there's nothing but a ton of gridlock within U.S. soccer. As a matter of fact, Don Garber sits on the U.S. Soccer Board of Governors. All the rules that U.S. soccer implements generally have MLS in mind. All the rules are geared towards them, which kind of shuts the door on the USL. How are you going to work through some of this gridlock with U.S. soccer to implement NSL?
Yeah, so as soon as I decided, an alternative industry is needed, I contacted US Soccer, I contacted Cindy Cohn, and I told her about the plans of, if we could create something. The problem I saw with the US Soccer is, going back to what you rightfully said, the restrictions with these pro league standards that are obviously there to shield the MLS from any real competition,
Yeah.
especially when you're
Yeah.
giving them a Division One sanction. So I had a bunch of concerns. I said to them, look, can we do this outside of this jurisdiction? And the answer was no. You have to go through as a pro league standards. And then I asked them the question of, if I do bring a investment into soccer in a rival, not in a rival league, but on an alternative league, can we still participate through the US Open Cup? That was initially said yes. And then I mentioned that we want to roll this out as a pro league team. And then no, then it was no, you have to follow, you can't be affiliated by the US Open Cup. If you want to be a professional team entering the US Open Cup, you have to abide by pro league standards.
Yeah.
And, I asked that question because I'm always inquisitive when I get a door slammed in my face. I asked them the question, why? And that was never answered. It was just ignored. So, I've looked at the US soccer. They lost $40 million last year. They're blowing so much money on wages. I think nearly $200 million has been blown up the wall on wages. And I don't know the exacts where that money's going. Probably to executives, probably out of the game. But it's not a good look.
Yeah.
But, Don Garber in there. If they're a serious regulatory body, then they should have. It should be closed off. They shouldn't have members of the MLS being on the board of US Soccer. It's a conflict of interest.
100%. 100%. It's a conflict of interest. Now, what ideally, if you are required to be sanctioned by U.S. Soccer, excuse me, in order to compete in a U.S. Open Cup, U.S. Open Cup tournament, is there a specific sanction, designated sanction that you're looking to get? Division I, Division II, Division III, and then also how does that play into, like, for instance, let's just say, okay, cool, they're going to designate the NSL as a second division team. How does that play in with the USL?
I think, one thing I've noticed is there's this obsession, and I think it's probably the football purists who want division sanctioning. You want this open league, but the problem is these pro league standards, they prohibit any fan ownership. That everything's leaning towards MLS. So if you're going to bring up something, why would you want to go in and create a league and go into an ecosystem you're going to lose? I looked at USL. Majority of those clubs are losing money. There's always 2 or 3 clubs who are dropping out every year. For me, minor league soccer doesn't work because there's no commercial. The standard of USL, and I'm not poo-pooing the USL because I know people have put money into it and gone in trying to invest. But the problem is the closed franchise model, giving teams exclusivity, not using meritocracy as the barometer of how the game should be measured. That to me is red flag. So to answer your question, going into US soccer ecosystem would be foolish for anybody wanting to build up value because of the restrictions in place. So I haven't got any plans to work with US soccer. I know, and I've looked at the model with how NISA moved in and their problems, and I just think you're just setting yourself up for another failure because it's a hard slog. Commercially in soccer, even in the Premier League and Championship, it's a hard slog to build value.
For sure.
Going into playing on playing on a college soccer stadium on American football pitches and AstroTurf. That's not where the future's at. It needs a rethink, and whether that's a reform by the US Soccer or another body coming and assembling around the best interests of the sport. I'm not sure, but there definitely needs to be changes, because you can't give all this control to one person. Otherwise, it's a bit like um, it's a bit like Russian oligarchs messing around with elections. There's too much control, and the game shouldn't be controlled. It should just be
It
allowed
should, yeah,
to, organically.
yeah. You mentioned meritocracy, and I know that the USL was looking to implement pro rel within the second and third divisions of the pyramid, because obviously Major League Soccer, it's a non-starter when it comes to pro rel. A lot of people think that it's the franchise fees that some of these billionaires play, but it's not that. It's the franchise valuations in a closed league, especially when you look at the NFL model. It's the franchise valuations that continue to rise every single year. And it doesn't matter if you sit at the bottom of the table, just the fact of being in a closed league and having these publicly funded, soccer specific stadiums being built, obviously every single year, regardless of your record, your franchise valuation goes up instead of down, which, no disrespect to the San Jose Earthquakes, but that's a franchise model that does not give a damn about its product. But it doesn't matter, right? Because they're a part of the closed system, and because other franchises do well, it raises their franchise value. If you open the pyramid, that automatically just drops, it plummets, right? And so, I like the idea of a merit-based system. But that being said, and I mentioned to you this off air that a very good friend of mine decided that U.S. soccer was not, the juice was not worth the squeeze, and he ended up going over to England and invested in the National League because the idea of, number one, only paying $5 to $15 million for a franchise, whether it be Forest Green, whether it be Torquay United. And by the way, I got a lot of love from my brothers out there in Torquay. But for them, it was worth it. And now, granted, they're probably not going to make a lot of money within the first 3 years. But that being said, if they're very responsible with their budgets, there's a good possibility they can actually break into the football league. And once you're a part of the football league, all you have to do is go up. And that was the problem with U.S. soccer. There's no upward mobility at all. So if you're if you're in a closed base system, the best that you can hope for is winning the league. And if not, well, such is life. There's no relegation. There's no promotion. And I think that's actually quite a shame. And I guess what I'm asking is there a worry about investing in U.S. soccer, knowing that regardless of what happens, your franchises will not move up or down?
Yeah, I think pro rel will happen with USL, but I think it will happen once the franchises, this franchise model dries up, the income comes. I haven't seen many investors write checks for $20 million, $30 million to the USL, which could signal that this franchise model isn't going to work. Pro rel would work, I think, for the USL. The problem is it wouldn't be an open system. They'd
Correct.
Still be operating on this exclusivity mark. There wouldn't be any challenge. The problem is that soccer works when people are under pressure, when there's a challenge,
100%.
when there's
100%.
Because that's when everybody raises the game. The front office raise the game, the players raise the game, and then ultimately it's the fans who get it. When there's no competition, the fans just end up with this sort of flat sport, and that's why nobody's interested in it. I've got data that shows there's 83 million people interested in soccer, but actually, how many people watch franchise soccer? Or how many people go and watch the games, or how many people on Apple are watching it? What's the viewership on USL? It's a drop in the bucket from the actual interest of the sport, and that is because the system's broken.
Correct.
So to answer your question, it will help the USL, but it's not real. It won't create competitive soccer. And again, USL it's still a second division quality league, which I'll probably say it's probably on par with what the National League is in England. It's like lower pro, semi-pro, borderline in terms of quality, where a second division or a professional team in America should be reflective at least what England are. You've got nearly 400 million people.
Correct.
If it was done properly, America would be the best in the world because of the infrastructure you've got in place. But by design, it hasn't been given a chance, and that's the frustrating part. And I feel sorry for a lot of the fans because that fan base has turned into consumers. Because it's a business first model. It's not based on anything else. It's not based on sporting excellence or it's on about how much money we can get. And when I see these press releases going through the press and congratulating MLS on how well they've done commercially and how many, when they've added up all their fans going to the stadiums and they've times it by the amount of games and they say, oh, we've got 12 million people watching MLS game. That's just smoke and mirrors. Where it's at is
100%.
It's a low quality game of league, and also with the press release, MLS are in the top 10 leagues in the world. Now that's laughable. To put the MLS in front of the Championship in England is balmy, because all you're doing is you're just calculating the value Messi brings and just adding it to it. Where how many players in the MLS could play in the Championship? That's the question. Or how many players have gone from the MLS and gone into the Premier League or played at high level? I've not seen many players make that transition.
I can think of 3 right off the top of my head, and I think that's the problem, right? There's not enough that have been able to make the jump, especially, and you mentioned the Championship. That's 100% accurate. I can't think of many players that have made that jump. Same thing with the Eredivisie, Serie A, Ligue 1 out there in France. There's just not a lot of movement. But that being said, the biggest problem for me, at least, is you mentioned that there's 80 million soccer fans that are looking for something special. I will say this though, because I run in with a lot of people that on the weekend they're watching the Premier League, they're watching the Championship, they're watching the Bundesliga because they understand this is the best of world soccer. And when it comes to the weekends here during the football season, they're not watching Major League Soccer because they understand. They understand exactly the quality and what's missing. And a lot of that gets back to the closed franchise-based system. My biggest problem with it is, and we touched on this earlier, is that U.S. Soccer's guidelines and their rules specifically favor Major League Soccer. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but they have territorial restrictions. And they're specific.
Same with USL. USL have the same. It's the franchise model.
Yeah, well, right. But, as far as player development, there's territory. Like, I'll give you a good example. Like, I live here in Michigan. We don't have an MLS franchise. But that being said, 2 MLS franchises basically split the state in half as far as youth development goes. And very rarely do we see Major League Soccer scouts here in the state of Michigan. Right? There's a lot of untapped talent in the state. And it almost seems like these MLS franchises are only interested in scouting their local areas. For example, like Columbus is one of the teams that have territorial restrictions here in Michigan. But, for the most part, from what I've been told, they're usually just scouting the Columbus area. We had a massive tournament with youth clubs, and as a matter of fact, no MLS scouts showed up for it. There were a few scouts from Detroit City FC, but that was about it. Because of this system, a lot of youth talent falls through the cracks. And it's a shame too, because you mentioned pay for play. I guess my question is, what is the NSL model for youth development? Is there going to be an academy system? Is there going to be like a free satellite academy, those type of things for for families that can't afford massive club prices to pay to play? Because one of the biggest problems in the United States is youth development at this point. Now, a lot of people will say Major League Soccer has done very good with their academies, and I'm like, well, that's only scratching the surface a little bit.
Yes.
Because guys like Christian Pulisic will always get scouted. Guys like Weston McKennie will always get scouted because they come from upper middle class families that can afford to pay for these these soccer clubs. But for the talented kid, 12-year-old kid whose parents can only afford YMCA football and can't get into some of these premier youth clubs, youth academies, they're basically left twisting in the wind. And unfortunately, there's a reason why Major League Soccer is going to get stunted when it comes to youth development, and that's the reason why our national team isn't going to reach the highest of highs. What is the youth development model?
Yeah. So there's multiple layers to this. So I'm in the process of putting a proposal together, which is going to go to the Trump administration. It's going to show how we can basically create a new educational platform of soccer that integrates into high school soccer. Now, that will require some funding from the government for School of Excellence, which will be at college. It won't cost a lot of money, but it would be School of Excellence, little academies that the best players can turn up on a Thursday or a Friday afternoon. That'll be government funded. Those then will be connected into a state program that'll be a state junior. They'll have, so for instance, you're in Michigan, you have a Michigan State where all the School of Excellence, and then it'll be selected in. That'll be then a tournament. The tournament then will be a knockout tournament, which then will create competitive soccer plus pathways. The best kids in that tournament then will be given an opportunity through the NSL to become pro. They won't be given the opportunity, they'd have to earn the opportunity. So I'm in discussions with multiple facilities that we set up national training programs where we take the top 1,000 kids who are in high school between the ages of 14 to 16 predominantly. So, youth players. And we bring over academy, category 1 academies, and we bring that infrastructure over, which is the UK model, and we turn those kids into young professionals. The key to this is having a professional platform. So to kickstart the NSL, so it's still very early stages with the NSL. So I've set up a crowdfunding platform, which is basically to show investors that there's an appetite for this model. It's on WeFunder. We've raised maybe about $16,000. I haven't actively pushed it. There's no ads on it. There's no spend. I've just left it open to show investors what we have as a proposal, or because it's about transparency as well, not just only giving the opportunity for fans to get involved. But the idea would be is once we've got our first at least 4 teams, then we will have the funding to then take and run a national trial, which then will be focusing on 16-year-olds who are playing high school football, who can't afford to go into the pay to play. We want to give them an opportunity to come down to a facility. There's one actually I'm discussing at the moment in Pennsylvania that can house 400 kids. The idea would be we take those kids, we run a documentary series, so similar to what the UFC did with Ultimate Fighter, where we take these kids and we show them what the level is. We bring over some bigger names from the Premier League to show them what the standard is and how they can optimize themselves as professional soccer players, because it's ultimately about standards in place, which is giving these kids the opportunity, because that's the biggest. That's where they're being let down by the system. Is I've seen young lads who've been playing in the NPSL or USL, who've got the raw talent, they just haven't got the standards, they haven't got the professional training to play at that higher level. And sometimes with players, they just need that opportunity in that time space to grasp and understand the game, and then it twigs. They suddenly they become a player because everything just aligns. And I think if we can get 400 kids, I think we could develop maybe 50 pros out of
Absolutely.
kids, 16-year-old Americans, and to have the media behind it and give those kids a chance. And we recruit, and as the league gets better, we offer, bigger. We get more kids coming through, and I think America, looking at MLS and USL, I think the majority of them are foreign players. America's big enough because it's the size of Europe to have an all-American league, to have all the talent being American. They just need to be shown the standards and given the pathways to play there. But I'm hopeful if we can get this off the ground, I can get some deep pocket investors around it, with team ownerships. I'm hopeful that we can give these kids an opportunity outside of the pay to play, because I'm not interested in talking to rich kids who are playing pay to play. I want to be talking to those kids like your Messis, your Ronaldos, the kids who haven't got the money or opportunity. I want to give them the opportunity to play.
Now, a lot of this development is going to be hanging on coaching as well too. Is there a plan? Is there a plan for developing American coaches, or is this going to be a mixture of global coaches that are going to be coming in to develop American kids? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we need to ramp up the standard. The standard has to be the best. But the Premier League academies are some of the best in the world. They've got the blueprint. We need to bring over those guys who've got the blueprint, and I've spoke to some of them already who've been in and around the game, very experienced, big names who could come in and they could help us develop the blueprint. And then the focus would be not just bringing American players through, but showing these coaches what it's like to be a coach at a higher level. Not only just giving the kids the opportunity, but giving the coaches the opportunity to coach at a higher level. And the game isn't rocket science. A lot of the stuff it's built on compatibility. It's being competitive. Sure. It's mindset. It's management. It's looking at different ways, putting the players' needs in first. But I think most of all, it's about intensity and giving these kids, putting them in that environment. And it's either sink or swim. They've either got the ability or they haven't. But I think there's enough players playing in America to raise those standards. And I'm just surprised US Soccer haven't done this. They, rather than spending 150 million on their own wages and playing these pointless national team games, why don't they put that money into these kids and raise the standard outside the pay to play? Maybe it's too difficult for them. Maybe they don't understand how to do it, or maybe their own self-interest, is more important for them. But I'm planning to do this outside. I'm not going to ask permission. I'm not going to beg US Soccer to work with me. I'm confident I can connect investors into this, and in turn, give these kids an opportunity and then get the fans on board, because what better story than building up these American heroes? And that's what it's going to be about. The NSL it's putting America first and giving these kids a platform.
Absolutely. We talk about the problems of the closed system of Major League Soccer, but the other problem that faces that challenges U.S. soccer is the coaching is horrible. A lot of American coaches, and of course they won't say this publicly, but privately they'll say that, the reason why they don't go over to Europe to challenge themselves is because the money is so good here. Especially if you have a young coach who, spends 8 years in the U.S. system and then reaches the highest of highs of Major League Soccer and is making $2-3 million a year. Why would he forfeit that by going to Europe to be an assistant coach? The only coach that I can think of that did that was Jesse Marsh, who left his head coaching position with the New York Red Bulls to go into the Red Bull system and be an assistant overseas. And the theory is that iron sharpens iron, right? So why wouldn't you want to go learn from some of the best minds that are coaching in Europe? It only helped you. But one of the biggest issues is the fact that U.S. coaches are comfortable. They feel like their style of soccer is best suited for the American development and the American player. But I personally call bullshit on that, because you look at some of these players, American players that do go overseas, and you see the development ratchet up 50%, 50 to 100%. So that would I would probably assume that that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, they don't stand a chance, these kids, though, because you've got to hit them at a critical time. That time
100%.
for me is between 14 and 16 years old. And if they're not playing intense, competitive soccer at that age, then they've got no chance. And that's the problem.
Oh, absolutely. Because you have coaches that are going to, you have coaches that are going to take away from the strengths of the player. If you have a creative attacking midfielder with flair, a lot of these American coaches don't want to see that. They're like, no, you pass the ball to the open man. You're not going to go 1v1, these type of things, and it really diminishes the quality of the young player.
Yeah, it's stifles creativity.
Yeah.
You've got to look at college soccer. College soccer's the worst for it. You've got all these 11 athletes, and half of them can't kick a ball straight.
Yeah.
That is the wrong. It's
right
like a different. It's like a different sport, where you look at like another thing I've not mentioned on is like the immigrant side of America. America's made up of multicultural.
Yeah.
Those kids, those Hispanic kids, the creative kids, the ones who want to try the pass, the ones who can read the game. I don't see many of those players. It's almost like they've been restricted, and football is about flair. And you could say the same in the Premier League. Some of the game now with the creative players have sort of moved out for this newer system, but. I think you need the mavericks. You need the kids with the talent who will try something, because that's what makes it entertaining. And unless it's entertaining, then nobody will show up and be interested in it.
Is there a specific type of investor you're looking for?
Yeah. So the way we're packaging it up, so to get somebody to come in at the level, we have to give them the opportunity. So I'm going to look at. So we've got 8 teams to kickstart it. We need to get at least 4 teams to work on a tour-based model. 8 teams would work better for the league. So I need to find somebody who can either finance all 4 as a minimum, or buy it off individual teams, market individual teams. It has worked in the USFL, who launched a spring and summer league. They managed to raise 150 million off Fox on a deal. Whether a network would go for the NSL, I'm not sure. But I think it's a hell of a lot better proposal to come in and take 8 teams than pay MLS 500 million for a franchise team. But going to the numbers, I've got the business model itself is to take 8 teams, to grow it year on year at 25%, which I think with the interest of soccer, we could do that by introducing new teams, but also increasing attendance. There'll be a media value that will grow organically with that. Sponsors will want to align with a new startup, especially if we can get it up and running. So the idea would be we set it up, but then we offer, we move towards an IPO. The IPO then will
Yeah.
go through the New York Stock Exchange, and then the ownership will be public. Having a publicly run company will be so much better than having a privately run company like MLS because of the standards in place. You can't get away with making it up as you go along. You know, it's more of a democratic. So I think the IPO of the league itself is a no brainer. I have seen it work in other sports. You know, UFC have done
Yeah.
it. I know WWE, which isn't a sport, but again, they've worked on a tour-based model, sports entertainment. They've done it. So I can see it working for soccer. In terms of numbers, each club's going to cost a minimum of 5 million a year to run. So I've done the maths to run it operationally, something on par with MLS over a 16-week period. So a third of the season, I think you could run something on a budget of a League One in England team, which you could do as a minimum of about $3 million over a 16-week period. So I'm looking for, investors who could come in, could put up the money, the working capital. There's no franchise fee. I'm not putting any restrictions in place, or I'm just saying, look, you run the team for 3 years, get it off the ground, and then as we ramp up, then we can sell equity. We can go to cities. So I've already spoke to some cities about city ownership as well. There's a lot of opportunity because the sports franchise model are basically going to cities and saying, would you like to have a city team, and will you build us a stadium in return? That to American taxpayers isn't a great proposal, because why are you financing it for a group of deep pocket investors who are just looking for their own
Yeah.
gains? Going to a
Sure.
city and saying, look, we can actually give you a team for your city. We can actually show you how to run the team. We can also have a turnkey solution if you want to build a stadium and increase more facilities for grassroots teams, and build soccer pitches, and really make it a focal point for the community, rather than just a privatized proposal that leaves the city on the hook. And then if the sports franchise, like what they've done in Oakland, wants to move out of town, then the public taxpayers are just sat there with an empty stadium, not doing anything, because the sports franchise. So I see it as the long-term play is get it started and then go to the cities. And if we can get support off the president with the educational side of things, I can see this changing, because ultimately it's putting the American person first. The public first. And these cities are mandated first and foremost to act in the best interest of the constituents. It's not about how much money, what happens, or corruption, or they have to put the local people first. And I think what better way than having this World Cup and getting people excited, but also building up these teams, these city-owned teams. And it has worked in sports franchise. They've got the Green Bay Packers that are a community-owned team.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Germany do it in with a 50+1.
Yes. I was going to ask you if this is going to be based off the Bundesliga 50+1 model, where they essentially sell shares in the shares of the team.
Yeah, I'm just looking at how we can go to cities and say, look, here's a capital table. We've got a team. So given it, for instance, the LA Aztecs, there's about 40 different cities around LA. We could go to those cities and we could say, look, we've got the LA Aztecs. It's up and running. We've got millions of people watching the games. We want to find a home for it. And we've got a capital table here that allows the Chamber of Commerce, the city, the county to have ownership of this asset. We can show you how to run it. You don't need a footballing department, because the league will do all the operations. But the actual team itself is owned by the people. That for me is the beautiful model. If we can do that 20, 30, 50 times, suddenly you've got a proper proper football in.
You have sustainability, 100%.
Yes.
I like that, right? Because right now in the top levels of American soccer, there's no accountability, right? So if a team mismanages a team mismanages its budgets, there's no accountability. A team is awful, fans don't show up. It's like, well, it's everything's great. But in a I guess you can say a merit-based system, which is used around the world. If the team messes up their finances for a season, there's a good possibility they end up in administration, heads roll. You know what I mean? And it's the supporters group that have the largest voice. If there's an executive that is mismanaging it, you're done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. Before we close out, I do want to ask you, how, like you mentioned LA, the LA Aztecs, the former home of Georgie Best, Northern Ireland's best, by the way. For those that don't remember George Best, he was a star with Manchester United. But in a city that already has two pretty popular MLS franchises in the Galaxy and LAFC, how are you going to get fans of LA to come on board when they have two MLS franchises already in their own backyard? I guess the biggest question, and I get this all the time, is like, is there enough fans to go around to accept, more soccer teams?
Yeah. So we will be playing outside the window of when the MLS play. So there's no reason why LA Galaxy fans and LAFC fans can't support the Aztecs, because we'll be playing in a different ecosystem. The idea would be
Right.
there's 20 million people in LA, in the metropolitan area. There's other markets around it like Orange County, Riverside County that don't have MLS clubs. So you've got a huge demographic that's underserved. What I would do, or the plan would be with the Aztecs, is we would get it up and running, and then year 3 we would go into the cities and we'd say, would you support this? Would you build a stadium? Would you? Which city wants the Aztecs? Then suddenly it's not just a franchise or a McDonald's model that MLS are rolling out. It's a city-owned team owned by the constituents, whether that's at county level or state level or the city level. That to me is more compelling ownership as a fan, to be involved in a community, front-facing community club, than a sports franchise model. Because let's face it, the problem with the sports franchise model is they pump these valuations up. The quality isn't particularly great on the pitch, but the valuations are pumped up. But who pays the price? It's the fans. The fans are the ones who have to pay $60, $70, $80. They have to pay extortionate fees for parking and food and beverage and $200 retail shirts for the kids. That to me is over commercialization, and I think
100%.
if we could have a more affordable alternative, then it's only going to be more inclusive, which is, go back to my point, that's what it needs.
And you're absolutely right, because after the 2026 World Cup, Major League Soccer is going to be adjusting to the FIFA calendar, which will be fall through spring, which will leave the spring and summer schedule wide open for the NSL to come in and fill that.
There's talk of MLS doing the model, but playing over the spring and summer. But I don't know how that's going to work out if you've got a team in Michigan or in Chicago. You can't be playing in December, January. Well, how cold is it at the moment?
I would probably assume they're going to have a winter break between December and January, and then they'll probably make the schedule so northern teams go to the southern states, during the winter. But that being said, you still got to train outdoors, especially if you're training. Your training facilities are still going to be outdoors. Those type of things. As we're getting close to it, I want to ask you about salary caps. They seem very irrelevant here in the States. Every single major league has a salary cap, and of course, if the cap goes up, it's due to revenue. Major League Soccer seems to be firm on their $5 million salary cap, not including DPs. What is the salary model for the NSL, and for instance, the USL doesn't have a salary cap. Obviously, their revenue is generated by match day revenue. So, hypothetically, they could go out and sign Messi if they really wanted to, but they probably couldn't afford it. What is going to be the salary structure?
Yeah, so the model with the NSL is basically a back to front model to MLS. So we won't have salary caps. So all salary caps do is they just limit the quality of player who can come in. If they can't trust the management to bring in the players and operate sustainably, then those guys need to get fired. They shouldn't be shackled in a salary cap, because that's not fair on the fans or even the players themselves. What I plan to do with the NSL is, instead of having a salary cap, have a minimum spend. So whoever runs the operations will have to spend $3 million. They'll be mandated for the league. The league then will register all the players. They'll all be registered similar to how the MLS operate through one entity, and then that will also have a union aligned with it as well, and the players' rights will be sat with the union. That way, we can then connect to the FIFA ecosystem as a
I was going to ask
union.
you. I was going to ask you about FIFA rights.
Yeah, so I think salary caps are bad. I would encourage club owners to invest in the quality, but without getting stupid, because you can run a soccer club sustainably if it's done right. And I think because it's never been done right in the US, that's where I come in with the NSL. Is we can offer that turnkey solution that manages the process, that gets the on-field quality, but also doesn't restrict. If somebody wants to come and say, I want to spend $10 million for the LA Aztecs, they can do. All we'll do is we just get a bigger pool of players and give them the options to do that. But to increase the quality of player, you've got to have, you can't restrict the game.
Right. Somebody will say, well, look at the old NASL, because they expanded early and they spent big to bring in big names to attract fans to the upstart league. And because of it, they overextended themselves. And I think that's where, that's kind of where I'm at, wondering, that's the reason for the salary cap. So it protects owners from overextending themselves, especially if they don't have that initial revenue coming in. I'm also not a fan of the salary cap either. But that
we've got to get out of this thing of the fans shouldn't worry about the owners. The fans shouldn't care if the owners are losing money. At the end of the day, that's their owner's job. All the fan cares about, really, and this is where it's probably been brainwashed, is all the fans should bother about is the soccer entertaining, and am I getting value for money? Who cares what the owners are losing money, or the political side or the business side? There's too much focus on that. We should just go back to increasing the quality of soccer. How do we do it? Well, we'll make it more accessible. And to do that, we need more teams and more industry. And there would be some pushback. I've had pushback on social media from people saying, oh, we don't need another English guy coming in trying to tell us what to do. It's like, no, the agenda is to build more infrastructure. And how do we do it? Well, we've got to think outside the box. And what better way than bringing back the original teams and getting American players play for it? And that's
100%. And I don't see anything wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I think more the merrier. The biggest problem is right now is because of territorial restrictions, it limits what other professional teams can do. You look in England, it's a perfect example. Because of their open pyramid, you can have a team on Merseyside. You can have a team, a League Two team in Manchester, Birmingham City, Cardiff, Wrexham, whatever the case may be. The more professional teams, the more academies, the more youngsters get to get into that professional setting. The more professional teams, the better in my purview.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. All it's going to do is enhance the talent level. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is because I understand there's never going to. I don't think there's, at least for the next 10 years, at least I think I can confidently say there's not going to be pro rel from the top down. But one of the things that they can do is allow these Division II teams to have academies, to develop their own talent, because the reality is the more money that goes down the pyramid, the better, right? Because right now the money stops at MLS Next Pro, right? And it doesn't trickle down. My whole thing is, for instance, let's just say the LA Aztecs or Detroit City FC in the USL has their own academy and they're scouting their natural region. What's going to end up happening is that 15, 16-year-old high school kid is going to have an opportunity to get first team minutes. And if you're playing in a setting like the US Open Cup, Major League Soccer teams are going to be scouting him anyways. And all that's going to mean is those young kids who previously didn't have an opportunity to get looked at by an MLS club, now they're going to have that opportunity. And that means transfer fees will come into play. And because there's a system right now that, a portion of that transfer fee will go to that original club, the money then goes down the pyramid. And all that's going to do is it's going to allow more kids to either come into big youth clubs on scholarship, or you're going to see creations of new youth clubs that are going to serve some of these underprivileged areas of the country, right? So if you're not going to open up the system, fine, at least open up academies for every professional team, and that is going to include the NSL.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. There has to be funding, especially if there's development clubs. The problem is, because it's so broken and disjointed, US soccer, it is very difficult because you've got some of these academies that are pay to play. If kids are paying to play to go into an academy, then why should they have economic rights to the kids? Because ultimately, the kid's the one who's been financing themselves in the academy. So I think there has to be a restructure. I think that's more US soccer's remit, because they're the national federation. What my focus is outside of that, and how we can connect government and education into the game, because that's something they're not doing, and how can we get the fans involved, and which will ultimately give more opportunity to players. I think it's going to be hard to. The problem is, because it's so broken, the system, it's going to be hard to fix. That's why US soccer need a reform. They need Don Garber to get off the board. They need some strong leadership. They need to rethink the pro league standards. They need to rethink the divisional sanctioning. There's so many things they need to sort out. But I'm not here. I'm not part of that. I'm not a member of US soccer. I've got no interest in joining them. In fact, from what I see, it looks to me like an old boys club.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Which is not something I want to be part of. But we just want to create a fairer game and give more opportunity.
Yeah, I will say that the U.S. Soccer Federation is the only global federation I can think of that has a commissioner of a league sitting on its own board. I would be surprised if the president of the English Premier League is sitting on the FA board over there in England. I would highly doubt that actually happens. But before I let you go, man, how can I and my listeners get involved? Because I actually think this is going to be a very good. It's going to be very good for U.S. soccer. It's going to be good for U.S. development. So how can somebody like me get involved?
Yeah,
And help out?
there's multiple ways. We need to show that the fans are not happy with what they've been fed. The media will say, "Oh, it's growing great, and look how wonderful the sports franchise model." We all know it's not great. We all know that the players aren't. So, in order to create meaningful change, we have to create what you call a wave of interest, a wave of people coming together. And it might be the soccer coaches, it might be the fans, it might be the mums and dads of players. But we need to show them that there's people who want change. The best way to do that is to go through the crowdfunding. You can get involved from as little as $100. What that does is it's not accumulating money through the WeFunder. It's just to show that there's investors, there's people behind it. Because that makes it easier for me then to go to investors and say, look, we've got 2,000-3,000 fans on the crowdfunding. We want change. How do we get change? You can do it. I've created the model, the vehicle to do it. We just need the fuel to take us there. And I think if we can show that, it will happen. If we don't show that, it's going to be difficult. So yeah, to answer your question, the WeFunder page is one. There's another thing with the petition, which I'll send you the link over, Steve. Which
Absolutely.
It's through the USPTO for some of these shelved trademarks. I want to take that out to the media to show that there's the fans again want these teams back, and I think a petition always is strong. Yeah. So we've set that up. Absolutely. I think we've got about 150 people signed it already. If we can get to 1,000, that will help us, get a bigger voice, because ultimately they don't want this. They don't want the NSL to happen, but the fans should want it to happen because it needs to happen. Otherwise, things will start going backwards. It'll start getting more expensive. It'll Absolutely. Be worse to watch. It's not a great thought.
Yeah, and I will include the link to the WeFunder and the petition in the comment section of this video, and I will also put it on my X account as well too to help you get the word out, because this is actually a very good thing for U.S. soccer. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. You're 100% right, because Major League Soccer will plateau. Right now, we're in an expansion era, but with a closed system. Even if they do like an MLS 1, MLS 2 type model where there's promotion relegation, it's still a closed model, and the league will plateau because if
it's predictable. It's predictable. You know what's going to happen.
Yes,
it's like Messi will go, and they'll bring Pogba in. He'll be the next guy.
Yeah.
This isn't going to be as tough.
Yeah, no, 100%. And if you're not going to do promotion relegation and you're not going to raise the salary cap, but you're going to continue to raise the prices of tickets, because that's the biggest problem right now. There is no price differential in Major League Soccer. So, for instance, I was going to go to a U.S. Open Cup match back in Seattle. I was going to fly out there to go watch Seattle versus LAFC. The problem is, number one, they weren't playing at Lumen Field; they were playing at Starfire, and the tickets were $80. The same price for a Major League Soccer match during the regular season. There's no price differential between the two, and season ticket prices continue to rise. And you're starting to see attendance dips. Season ticket holder, the Senators will say that season ticket holders, they have a 95% renewal, but attendance is dropping because game day sales have continued to plummet because nobody wants to pay Premier League prices for Major League Soccer quality.
No.
Right. And it's going to plateau and what happens. And we're already starting to see it in certain cities now. Like
how much do you think it's worth? How much would you say the ticket should be?
I would probably say that, if you have different sections in the stadium, a ticket should cost no more than $50.
Yeah.
Like the most expensive down on the field should be 50, but if you're going up, let's say you're in the 200 level, they should literally be like $10-15. Like a family of four, to for a mom and a dad to take their two kids to go watch a Major League Soccer match, they should not be paying $400.
No.
To go see a. I would understand if you're watching like Spurs versus City. That's you're watching the best soccer in the world. But for Major League Soccer to price gouge, all you're doing is phasing out blue collar workers that would otherwise would have loved to come watch your product, but unfortunately they're not going to drop $400 to go watch to go watch Seattle versus San Jose or San Jose versus Montreal. You know what I mean? They're not going to watch that product. It's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and that's why I think Major League Soccer will plateau. I really do believe that, and I think at that point, when Major League Soccer has to scramble, they're finally going to listen to their fans again. Because there was a time where Major League Soccer did that in the infancy, and the supporters groups were a loud portion of each individual franchise, but now it just feels like a corporate product. It feels like Nike, it feels like Coca-Cola, it feels like Mercedes-Benz or whatever the case may be. And the atmosphere at a Major League Soccer game does not feel the same as it did 10 years ago.
No.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I want to thank you for stopping by, man. I really do appreciate this. And anytime you want to come on to talk about the NSL or anything that is happening, I would more than welcome you back on the show. I actually do want to keep updated about the growth, especially once investors get attached, and then the actual plans are starting to be implemented. I'd love to have you back on then.
Yeah, no, appreciate it, and hopefully, we'll have some news over the next few months. I'm going to do a real push, I think, for 2015. It's going to be difficult to get anything up and running before the World Cup, but if we can get something, make some traction, then I'm confident. We can make it happen.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm going to help you out as well too. The last thing you don't want to do is rush this thing. This has to be implemented perfectly, and the timing has to be right. And I think getting a bounce off the 2026 World Cup is going to greatly enhance it. So if there's anything I can do, you just let me know. I'm going to post the links to the WeFunder.
Well,
petition.
I'm going to be busy over the next few months finding partners as well to help me execute it. Because at the moment I've got the plan, the vehicle's been set up, but we need all the cosmetic stuff. So I'm looking for the best in class partners, AI technology around soccer, because the more ingredients we can get, the better it'll be, and the more chance that it'll be successful.
Absolutely, and again, you have a guy like me that's willing to use my platform to make sure that this gets launched accordingly. So anything I can do to help, I will definitely be there for you. I want to thank you for stopping by, and remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons, but also hit the notification bell. I want to thank you, Scott, for coming in, and I hope you guys have a beautiful Saturday afternoon. And of course, we have playoffs tonight. But we also have a slew of European English fixtures today. I don't know how you feel about it, but my Spurs are playing Fulham on Sunday, and we're still basking after Big Ange, and we're still glowing after the 4-0 beatdown that we had at the Etihad last weekend. So I'm still buzzing. So I'm looking forward to that match as well too. But I'll tell you what, man, my Norwich City Canaries are doing pretty well as well. Doing pretty well this year too. So. That's the thing is I don't know how you feel, but I love the championship. I actually think it's one of the best leagues in the world. I love the championship.
My team are playing at the moment. Blackburn Rovers playing Leeds. I don't know what the score is, but I was going to go today. I've got a game tomorrow. I'm going to Blackpool and Birmingham in the FA Cup. Which is a local team.
I'm a fan of Blackpool, but by the way, a lot of people don't know this, but Alan Shearer was a member of the Blackburn Rovers back in '92 when Blackburn, I believe, won the Premier League
94.
title. 94. There you go.
94.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I was
Not a lot of people. Not a lot of people remember Alan Shearer. Hell of a goal scorer, man.
It's great. Brilliant player. We need to find an American Alan Shearer. That's the idea.
We do. His name is Christian Pulisic, except he doesn't play up top. So
brilliant. All right. Thanks for your time.
All right, man.
Everybody.
I want to thank you again, and thank you for everybody for tuning in. So it's going to be great, man. And also, you can go ahead and check Scott out on X. I believe it's Scott Matchmaker.
Yes,
I believe that's your Twitter
Scott
handle.
Matchmaker. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on most social platforms.
Excellent. And you can also check out the league's webpage, and I believe it's at NSL Official, correct?
NSLofficial.com, but I'll send over the WeFunded page. That's the one which shows the full business plan and the properties we've got, and the overall vision.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Excellent. All right, you guys have a great afternoon, and thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you later. Have a great afternoon, guys.
All right, you too. Cheers. Bye bye.